By the 1910s, Ford had the Model T, cheap, dependable, and simple enough for an ordinary American to fix with basic tools. Ford wasn't trying to give people choices. He was trying to put one reliable car in as many driveways as possible. And it was working better than almost anything in American industry ever had. Then a company that started out barely looking like a company at all built something Ford had no answer for. Not a better car, but a completely different kind of business. This is the story of William Durant, the salesman who built an empire by buying instead of inventing, lost it twice, and still ended up changing how every car company on earth would eventually compete. Stick around, because Ford never lost to a better engineer. He lost to a better idea about what a car company could be. William Crapo Durant was born in Boston on December 8, 1861, and dropped out of school as a teenager. By 1886, working in Flint, Michigan, he partnered with Josiah Dallas Dort to start the Flint Road Cart Company, building horse-drawn carriages. Durant wasn't an engineer. He was a salesman who understood what customers wanted better than almost anyone in the business. And under his direction, the carriage company grew into one of the largest vehicle manufacturers in the country. He'd learned something that would define his entire career. You didn't have to invent the product to build the business around it. Automobiles still looked like a noisy, dangerous novelty to most of the country, and Durant wasn't impressed either, until he actually drove one. Buick wasn't a success story waiting to happen. Incorporated in 1903, the company was struggling financially when Durant was asked to take over its management in 1904. He drove a Buick over rough roads for weeks before he believed in it. Once he did, he went all in, using his carriage business money and distribution connections to push the company hard. 8,820 cars. That's what Buick built in 1908, more than Ford and Cadillac combined, making Buick the largest automobile producer in America in under 4 years. Buick wasn't just a car company anymore. It was the financial foundation for something much bigger. The American auto industry in 1908 was chaos. More than 250 small manufacturers, most of them barely surviving. Durant believed buying and combining companies could move faster than building every capability from scratch. He tried to merge with Ford, Ransom Olds, and other major manufacturers first. Those talks collapsed when Ford wanted cash instead of stock. Durant didn't give up. On September 16, 1908, he incorporated General Motors as a holding company, built around Buick, with Oldsmobile folded in weeks later. Cadillac and Oakland followed. The following year, Durant nearly bought Ford outright. Henry Ford agreed to sell for $8 million. Durant's own bankers refused to advance the cash, and the deal died. Ford would spend the next 2 decades as GM's biggest rival instead of its subsidiary. Ford's entire philosophy was standardization. One car, produced at enormous scale, priced low enough for nearly anyone. Durant wanted the opposite. A customer of modest means shouldn't necessarily want the same car as a wealthy one. So instead of forcing every buyer into a single model, GM would offer a range. Chevrolet at the affordable end, Oldsmobile above it, Buick higher still, Cadillac at the top. A customer didn't have to leave GM as his circumstances improved. He could move up through the family of brands instead. That idea, formalized years later under Alfred Sloan as a car for every purse and purpose, wasn't just a product strategy. It was a completely different theory of what a car company was for. One built around a customer's entire life rather than a single purchase. Durant expanded fast, financing acquisition after acquisition while the auto market was still young and unpredictable. The organization grew complicated, models multiplied, and financial pressure mounted. In 1910, bankers took control of General Motors and pushed its founder out of the company he'd built. He wasn't finished. He'd lost GM once. He was already looking for a way back in. Louis Chevrolet was a Swiss-born racer whose Buick team had won roughly half of America's major road races across 2 seasons. Durant saw more than a driver. He saw a car he could build a comeback around. In 1911, Durant and Chevrolet founded the Chevrolet Motor Company. The partnership didn't last. Chevrolet wanted performance and sophisticated engineering. Durant increasingly saw the company as a weapon against Ford's cheap Model T, which meant Chevrolet had to become affordable, not exotic. Louis Chevrolet walked away from the company carrying his own name. Durant kept the name, and that name would become one of the most valuable pieces in his comeback. Durant never fully let go of General Motors, even after losing control. He kept buying shares quietly while Chevrolet grew. By 1916, he'd accumulated enough stock to make his move. At a board meeting, he announced Chevrolet held a controlling interest in GM and was elected president again. The man who'd been pushed out of his own company was back in charge, And this time he'd brought Chevrolet with him, giving GM a direct answer to the Model T it hadn't had before. He was still the same Durant, though, brilliant at building an empire. A different problem entirely at running one. By the end of 1919, GM had grown far beyond the company the bankers had seized 9 years earlier. Then the post-war boom ended. Durant responded the way he always had, with enormous risk, buying GM stock on margin. 6 months later, his fortune was gone. He was bailed out on one condition: resign completely. For the second time, the founder lost the company he'd created. GM didn't need another daring acquisition this time. It needed discipline. Alfred Sloan became president in 1923, and instead of controlling every detail personally the way Durant had, he built a system where individual divisions carried responsibility while central management coordinated the whole corporation. It was a revolutionary way to run a company that had become too big for one man to control. Durant had given GM its size. Sloan gave it a structure that could actually run. Sloan didn't need one car to beat Ford. He needed a ladder. Chevrolet at the bottom, Oldsmobile above it, Buick higher, Cadillac at the top, with companion brands like Pontiac and LaSalle filling the gaps between them. A customer could enter the GM family at any rung and climb without ever leaving. Starting in the mid-1920s, GM added annual model changes, turning styling itself into a reason to buy again, with trade-ins folding an old car into the next purchase. In 1924, GM opened the Milford Proving Ground, the industry's first dedicated testing facility, logging over 1.5 million test miles in its first full year. Ford had mastered how to build a car. GM was mastering the entire system around wanting one. By 1927, GM's strategy had spent years quietly paying off, with the company's market share climbing steadily while Ford slowly eroded. That was also the year Ford shut down Model T production entirely to retool for the Model A. Amid that gap, General Motors' total U.S. sales passed Ford's for the first time. Durant's collection of brands and Sloan's management system had beaten a company that once looked untouchable. What GM teaches you. Lesson 1. You don't have to invent the product to build the business. Durant never engineered a single car. He understood distribution, financing, and what different customers actually wanted, and built an empire out of that understanding instead. Lesson 2. The person who builds an organization isn't always the person who should run it. Durant built GM twice and lost it twice, both times through the same pattern of aggressive, undisciplined expansion. It took Sloan's structural discipline, not another visionary founder, to make the empire actually function. Lesson 3. You can beat a competitor without building a better version of their product. Ford's grip on standardization was never really challenged head-on. Durant and Sloan simply stopped playing that game, offering variety and aspiration instead of a single perfect car, and changed what customers were competing over in the first place. Ford proved Americans wanted automobiles. Durant proved a car company didn't need to be built around one brand. Sloan turned that idea into a system disciplined enough to actually beat Ford at scale. That's how General Motors became Ford's biggest rival, not by building a cheaper Model T, but by making customers want something else entirely.